Good afternoon, everybody. It's Friday, and we're going to finish up our discussion for the week about civil rights and freedom, and we're also going to finish our book, Seeds of Freedom. Remember, yesterday we started learning about what was going on in 1962 in Huntsville, Alabama. You guys colored Alabama on the United States map. You found Alabama, you colored it, you looked at where Alabama is in relationship to North Carolina. We looked at the cotton from Alabama. We talked about the peaceful protests that were going on, like the sit-ins and the marches and those things. Oh, and the Blue Jeans Sunday. Remember, that was another way that they were peacefully protesting, is instead of spending their money in the downtown stores buying the fancy Easter dresses, they went to church on Easter Sunday in their blue jeans. So that is where we are today. We learned that Martin Luther King Jr. came there to speak. And so now this is where we are today. We're going to finish our book. Oh, and the whole theme of the book, this idea of seeds of freedom, this is throughout the whole book of thinking of freedom like a plant that needs to be nurtured. So they planted the little seeds. When they start doing their first few little things or protests and other things, that's starting the idea for people. But in order for this to grow, they have to keep nurturing it. They have to keep doing more, getting more people involved, getting more news coverage. Remember, we learned in the book, What's the Big Deal About Freedom? We learned that freedom is like a song, and if only one or two people are singing it, then it's not as effective as if you have a lot of voices that can be heard far and wide. So, in this book, remember, we're in Huntsville, and it says the public parks in Huntsville are for whites only. But a few black citizens decide to spend Mother's Day downtown in Big Spring Park. And so it's almost Mother's Day now. So in a few days, it'll be Mother's Day, and this is how they spent their Mother's Day. Remember, we talked about at the time that it was segregated, which meant that there were certain areas, certain restaurants, certain water fountains, certain parks that were for white children, white people, and black people. But this book is about how Huntsville became integrated, how everyone got along together, and were eventually given the same rights. The children swing and slide and ride the merry-go-round. People stare, but no one asks them to leave. And ducks don't care what color hand feeds them. So we're talking about like the ducks at the park. If you guys have ever gone to a park and seen ducks in the pond, the ducks didn't care. About a week later, a man is speaking on the courthouse steps, campaigning to be governor. And governor, that's the person that's elected to be in charge of the state. So you have the president of the United States, who's in charge of the country as a whole. And remember, we talked about the right to vote and to elect our leaders. So the governor is the leader for the state. So for the state of Alabama, there's a man named George Wallace who's trying to get people to vote for him. And he says that black and white people should be separated everywhere, now, tomorrow, and forever. And I've included on the website a link to his, just a portion of his speech. It's only about a minute long. But you can watch that speech that George Wallace gave on the courthouse steps. The black people of Huntsville have a very different message. They ride around the courthouse square in the back of trucks, waving flags, playing patriotic music, holding balloons filled with helium and tied with notes that say things like, "Please support freedom in Huntsville." They let all the balloons go until the sky is dotted with color. Wherever each balloon lands, it will plant a tiny seed of freedom. So this is like scattering the seeds out to the winds. So here's a picture of them in the park with their balloons and their notes. Okay, so this is the project that you guys are gonna do. In your tub, you have a piece of blue construction paper. Paper clip to that, you have a little envelope that's sticky on the back and a little piece of paper. You are gonna draw a balloon. You see here, I drew my balloon green. You can make whatever color you want. I used a white crayon to make the clouds. Okay, so step one, draw a balloon. Step 2, take your envelope, you peel it, it's sticky, it's on paper like this, like a sticker. Peel it off, stick it on here, okay? Stick your envelope on. On your little piece of paper, you write a message about freedom and hope. So mine, I just wrote freedom for everyone. And then that little piece of paper tucks right into the envelope. So this is like your message that you would want to send out into the world about freedom. Okay, so this is your activity, okay? Across the country, the call for change is heard. President John F. Kennedy supports freedom for all Americans. It is the law for buses, trains, and public schools to be open to everyone, although that is not yet the case. Huntsville is prosperous, proud, and peaceful. To keep it that way, the mayor realizes that whatever threatens the future of Huntsville must be stopped, even if it means stopping nearly a century of custom and tradition, and that's just the way it is. So the mayor realizes that this idea of like, that's just how it is here, that's not gonna fly anymore. To keep this city moving into the future, they're gonna have to make a change. And John F. Kennedy, he was the president at the time, and there's also a video on the website that shows him, the actual president, visiting Huntsville, Alabama in 1962. So all the parts that are in this book, this really happened, and I've linked to the video so you can see what it was really like. July 1962, only 6 months after the first Huntsville sit-in, victory is in sight. Black civil rights leaders and white city officials convinced downtown business owners to integrate, to come together and to integrate and not be separate anymore, that every store will allow everyone in, black, white, it doesn't matter, they're all gonna be welcome. And to bring Huntsville, black and white citizens together in peace. No one wants anyone who might turn this into a violent confrontation to know about the plan, so it's kept a secret. On a certain day, at a certain lunch counter, a certain time arrives. Black men and women sit down and have lunch beside white men and women. Some ask, is this okay? The lunch counter servers say, this is what we're doing. This is what we're doing, right? Policemen out of uniform keep watch, but there's no trouble. And so we've seen the pictures a couple days ago of what the actual sit-ins look like. Over the summer, little by little, people come together. At the hospital, the bowling alley, the movie theater, the tender plant of freedom is growing, but not in schools. In the fall, President Kennedy visits Huntsville to see the rockets and talk about freedom. So that's what's happening in the video that I show you. That's exactly what he's doing. Is coming to Huntsville to look at the rockets and talk about freedom. 35 black families asked the school board to obey the law that makes separate schools illegal. But the school board does nothing. So the law is that they have to be integrated. They can't be segregated anymore, but they're not following that. The school board says no. Angry voices on the telephone threaten these families until only 4 agree to be part of a lawsuit which won't be heard by a judge for nearly a year. Meanwhile, schools for black children have no library, no cafeteria, which is like a lunchroom, and no buses, while schools for white children seem to have everything. Are the seeds of freedom wilting? So wilting is like, you know, when a plant, when you don't care for it, which is what happens to my plants, you plant them and then you just leave them outside and maybe don't give them water and don't pull the weeds, and they kind of droop and get wilty. They're saying like, are the seeds wilting? Are we gonna actually see the change? Because it's not fair that the schools for the white children have everything, and the schools for the black children, they don't have a library, they don't have a lunchroom, they don't have buses. So here's a picture of one of the schools. It's a peaceful spring and summer in Huntsville in 1963, but not elsewhere in Alabama. More than 1,000 black children gather for a nonviolent protest in Birmingham Park. They are met with gushing fire hoses and snarling dogs. It's on television nationwide. The man who wanted segregation forever is now governor. So that man, George Wallace, that stood on the courthouse steps and said that he believed that black people and white people should be separated everywhere, now and tomorrow and ever, he got elected. So he is the governor. He stands in the university doorway trying to keep black students out. It's on television nationwide. 200,000 people marched for freedom in Washington, D.C. Dr. King gives a speech echoing the dream that black children and white children would join hands in peace. It's on television nationwide. So you can go back and look at all these things. But this is what actually happened. So you might can imagine, if you stop and just think about it for a minute, how frustrating that must feel. It must feel sad and frustrating and scary. In the heat of August, 4 Huntsville families faced the judge. Remember, it said before that these 4 families from this had a lawsuit, and it was going to take them a year before they could see the judge. Well, now that time's passed. Now they're ready to see the judge. Since the law is clear, he rules quickly, saying, admit these 4 students to school. He's saying, yes, you have to let them into school. It is the law. You have to do that. On the Tuesday after Labor Day, families all over Huntsville are packing satchels with papers and pencils. Satchels are like book bags. So like a bag, like a book bag. 4 black children prepare to walk into history. So what that means, walk into history, is they are the first 4 children in this area, so that they made history, which is why they're in this book. They're very important. Each hand in hand with a parent, each approaching a school where no friends are waiting. People shout ugly words at them. There are reporters, photographers. 4 hands reach for doors. They are locked. Governor Wallace has closed all Alabama public schools, planning to admit black children. Across town, at a private religious school with all black students, 12 white students began school without incident in the first case of so-called reverse integration. So here again, even though it's the law, even though they have to let them in, the governor has locked the doors anyway. So he is not listening. He is not doing the right thing. By Friday, Wallace sends state troopers to greet anyone trying to go to public school in Huntsville, Alabama with weapons and helmets and stern, grim faces. To keep the peace, he says. On Monday, September 9th, the students are ready to try again. The crowds and troopers are gone. There are just a few city policemen, reporters, and photographers, and the children just trying to go to school. At about 8:30 that morning, Dr. Sonny W. Hereford III, a leader in the civil rights movement, walks into 5th Avenue School with his 6-year-old son, Sonny W. Hereford IV, who becomes the first black child to attend a formerly all-white public school in the state of Alabama. Another peaceful first for Huntsville. There will be more work ahead, but through nonviolence and dignity and cooperation and courage, the black and white people of Huntsville have come together in peace to taste the sweet fruit homegrown from the seeds of freedom. So you see how the author carried that imagery all the way from the very beginning of the book when he talks about planting the seeds. He talks about growing the seeds, nurturing them, taking care of them, not letting them wilt, and now tasting the fruit, which is the reward that comes from the plant. So that's kind of what you hope for, right? When you plant something, you hope that you're going to get something out of it. Flowers or vegetables or fruit. So we planted these seeds hoping to get something out of it. They wanted to get freedom and integration out of it. And so now that's what they have, or close to it, and they're tasting that sweet fruit. So here's those kids. See their smiling little faces? So I hope you guys enjoyed that book. I know it's been, it's kind of a heavy topic, but you guys have done great. You've hung in there with me for our civil rights study. And now everyone, go make your balloon, write your note, and I want to know. I want you guys to share with me what you include in your note. What is your message of freedom that you want to send out into the world? Okay, bye guys.